Right?
All right. Hey, Black Blockchain Consultant, Cherie Warwick here. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I got a long-time dear friend of mine, and I brought her on in celebration of Content Creation Week. It's actually, we started last week, but we're continuing on with it this week because for the past 2 weeks, we've been talking about how to market your blockchain consulting company. And I reached out to Linda a couple of weeks ago and I said, hey, why don't you come on and be on our platform with us? And she has so graciously agreed. So Linda's the author of a couple of books. She's going to talk about why you should write a book, how it's going to build your credibility, how does it help you get speaking engagements and media coverage and clients, high-paid clients, and all of that. And she's going to answer your questions in regards to how long it's going to take to write it, how can you write it without pulling your hair out, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, we're going to give a virtual round of applause to Linda Griffin here.
Great.
Of Expertauthor411, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yes.
Expertauthor411.com is where you can go to check out Linda. So thanks for joining us this evening, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became Expertauthor411.
Yes, my pleasure. Well, I'll tell you, I never in a million years thought that I would be a published author. I am a techie by heritage. I was a math major in undergrad, and when I had my corporate career, I started out as a programmer, a systems person, database person. So I was always on the technical side of the house. Sorry, my dog just heard the front door. I apologize. So this always happens, right, whenever you're doing a live. So hey, stop. So, but when I opened my marketing company and I wanted to enter the bed and breakfast industry, one of my mentors, and Cherie, your mentors, Dan Kennedy, always said, the way to enter a market is to write a book. And I thought, oh, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Let me do that, not knowing what I was getting myself into. So through trial and error, a lot of tears and sweat, I did get my first book done for the bed and breakfast industry, and learned so much in the process about self-publishing that I created a process. I'm a process person, and I thought, okay, if I figured out how to do this, there are other people who want to do the same thing, and I can help them do that. So that's how I came up with my Fast Track to Author program, which is how to write a book in 90 days. And I've since gone on to work with other clients in helping them do that. So that's kind of the short story of how I transitioned from a technical person into a quote unquote writer / published author.
Yeah, and you're going back now to technical people because even though we aren't programmers, we are blockchain consultants, which of course is all about data management. So you are definitely in the right place. Former IBM woman.
Yes, right.
Yes,
right.
yes.
Yeah, and so
Delta. She's Delta as well. So all of my Deltas out there.
That's right. That's right. Delta Sigma Theta. So so one of the things that I was thinking about as I was preparing for our talk tonight is why a blockchain consultant might want to write a book. And there are lots of reasons why you might want to write a book, but there are two that I think really fit very nicely with your audience. The first one is credibility. If you're a one-person company, as an example, and you don't have an IBM business card like I used to have, then you have to stand on your own as being the credible person. What will a potential client think about if you come in with just your business card? Right? But if you come in with a book that you've written on your expertise in blockchain, all of a sudden they're going to sit up a little bit straighter, because that book is going to give you automatic authority. And the person is going to look at you differently. It puts you in the position of teacher as opposed to salesperson. because it says, I have knowledge that I put into a book. You can get it on Amazon. It makes me legitimate. And so that's one reason why you might want to write a book. And even if you have a larger company where you're working with a team, you as the CEO or the founder of the company, again, it sets you apart from other people who might be doing the same thing you are, because there's still very few people that write books. There are thousands of books that get written every year, but there are still 20% of people who want to write a book that actually do it. Mm-hmm. And so chances are your competition is not going to have a book. So that's going to automatically put you head and shoulders above the people you are competing with. The second reason that you could write a book is thought leadership. It kind of goes hand in hand with that credibility. But people today are very skeptical. When they want to hire someone and they're looking at multiple people and they don't want to be sold, they want somebody that they can feel comfortable with, that knows what they're doing. A lot of people hire consultants and they've been burned by consultants because the consultant will come in, they'll make a lot of promises, they'll write a big report, and then the person is left trying to implement it themselves or not knowing how to do something. So when you take something that you know and you write a book about it, let's say your process, and you put that process into a book, and you bring that with you to the conversation with the potential client, now all of a sudden you are looked upon as the thought leader, whether they read the book or not. And many people won't read the book. They'll take it, it'll stay on their desk or their credenza or their bookshelf. But just the fact of you having that book, again, gives you that thought leadership position.
Yes. And okay, so I want to go, because you said a lot of things and I want to break some things down for people. Mm-hmm. The first thing that you said, or the last thing that you said that I want to talk about first is putting your process in the book. Mm-hmm. And anybody who has not written a book before may think, well, if I write my entire process in the book, why would they hire me? They would just take my book, they'd read it, and then they implement the process themselves. And right. I can tell you as an author, mm-hmm. that does not happen at all. Right. I give my book away. So I have a book for my business plan company. Mm-hmm. I give my book away and people still pay me thousands of dollars to write their business plan. And like, I have all the information in the book in terms of yes. how to write the business plan. And it does not matter. They're like, oh, you wrote a book? Oh, that's mm-hmm. great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll still pay you. Here's my credit card.
Yes, right. So, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head, Cherie. That book, and I know that's one of the first things that people are concerned about. Oh, I'm putting all my information out there. Somebody can just take the book and run with it. But in reality, there's a very tiny percentage of people who might actually take the book and try to implement from the book. Mm-hmm. Most people, when they hire you, they want speed. They could go into the book and they could go step by step and try to muddle through on their own. But when they've got you and they can hire you to do it with them or for them, that's really what they want. And they want to be able to do it faster. It may take them, a year to implement everything that you've got in your book, whereas you can help them do it in 60 days if they hire you as a consultant. So yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. You should not be concerned about putting all of your great stuff in a book thinking that someone is going to take that and run with it. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and the other thing is everyone thinks their business is different. Mm-hmm. Your situation is different.
Right.
I know a woman who sells a $25 book on credit repair, mm-hmm. and she still gets, people will pay her $300 an hour to talk about their situation, because they yes. think their situation is different.
Yes.
And
yes.
she will tell them on the on her YouTube channel, your situation isn't different. You can take this book and take the letters, and it does not matter. Like right. people still want to talk to her to make sure that this applies to their situation.
Right.
So,
and just one more thing on that process. You can actually use your book as a starting point. You could actually build a class around your book, using your book as the syllabus for the class, and charge hundreds of dollars for that. Even though you may only be charging $25 for the book, you package that into a series of classes, either live or on the web, and you can charge a lot more for that. It's just, part of it is that people learn differently. Many people learn by reading, some people learn by audio, some people learn by video. So the more ways that you can put that information out there, the better, and the more ways that you can generate income from the same information.
Right. So something else that I want to, I thought of an objection that people may have, and I want to talk about that kind of immediately.
Yes.
And that is that blockchain changes so much. Why would we want to write a book? And when I say book, I mean either a physical book or an ebook. It could be
right.
Right. But if I write information about blockchain and something changes, then I would have to go back and write it again. I just want to let people know that just like we have that Blockchain 101 course where the basics are the basics, one of the things you might do with a book or an ebook is to write things that are evergreen content.
Right.
Another thing is there is something, it's called just-in-time publishing, where people are able to print one book at a time. If you want to keep relevant information in there and you keep updating it, you could. I wouldn't suggest that.
Right.
But so I wanted Linda to kind of talk about that because technology world, that is something that people are concerned about.
Sure, understand. And you're right. There are a couple ways to address that. You're correct. Writing evergreen content is one. So take the basics of blockchain and write a book about that, something that is not going to change. And another way is, even if you write something that, say, in 6 months is going to be different, if you do an ebook version, and what I recommend people do is do a print version and an ebook version, you can always update that ebook version very easily to add new information. The other thing you can do is you can come out with a revised edition. If you look at many of the books out there, they say, revised edition, new for 2018, right? Even though the book was written in 2016. So you can plan to upgrade the book as technology changes. The other thing you can do is you can combine your book with a website or a membership site or a Facebook group or something like that, where you put your disclaimer in the book that says, as of December 2018, this is current information, but join my Facebook group to get the latest and greatest. As things change, I'm going to share that with you. That's another way to build your tribe. So there's lots of ways that you can address the fact that technology is moving and changing all the time.
Yeah. And Audrey Taylor is a member of our group, and she's helping us with our social media. And she was telling me that within Facebook groups, you can set it up. I don't know if it's the groups or the pages. Don't ask me, ask Audrey. But she she's setting it up where people have to give us their email address in order to get into the group.
Yes.
And with that, one of the things we talked about last week in the 6-figure course was building an email list. So now you got, you can ask somebody, did you buy our book? Just so that you can know if they bought the book. And then number 2 is what's your email address? And that way you're building your email list as well. So I like that as an option, Linda, in terms of keeping people current and up to date, especially if it's an industry like healthcare or energy or financial services where, new information is constantly coming out.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so the third question that I had in regards to your original content that you told us was, how to write your book in 90 days. And somebody may say, do I have to work 40 hours a week in order to write the book in 90 days? How can I do it so quickly? What's the amount of time that I would really have to spend? And let's talk also about what's the amount of pages or length. Let's just take an ebook just so that people won't hyperventilate.
Okay. All right.
So
Okay, well, we can talk ebook, but I'm a big proponent of print books for a lot of different reasons, but this applies to whether it's an ebook or a print book. And the first thing you want to do is you want to think about what is it that you want this book to do for you? How is it going to fit into your overall marketing strategy? So as an example, if you're thinking about an ebook, that might become a free download, or it might become a bonus that you offer to people. So how do you plan to use that book? Do you plan to go to people that you want to partner with and ask them to let you be a speaker on their podcast, or write a guest post on their blog? So how do you want to use that book? That's the very first question that you want to ask. The second thing you want to do is decide who your audience is, because you can write a book, as you mentioned earlier, you could write a book for beginning blockchain people. You could write a book for a specific industry. How does a business coach use blockchain effectively? So you want to think about who are you writing the book for, and what problem are you solving for that person? That problem might be providing information in the case of a blockchain 101, or it might be giving them a specific task or process to solve a specific problem related to blockchain. So that's the first thing you want to do. Who is your audience, and what is the problem that I'm trying to solve? When you have those two questions answered, then you can think about, well, how much information do I need to provide to solve that problem? And I will tell you that in today's environment, a book that is well under 200 pages, more like a 70 page to 150 pages, is what people are looking for. We're in the YouTube environment today. People are used to quick. They have very short attention spans. They do not want a 300 or 400 page book. So I tell my clients, don't try to put everything that you know about your subject into that one book. What you want to do is think about your first book. What is the problem I want to solve in my first book? And if that doesn't exhaust your capabilities, which I know that it won't, then you can always do a second book or a third book and put additional information into that. So if you narrow that topic to solving one specific problem for a specific target audience, and then shoot to have a book that is 150 pages or less, that is something that absolutely can be done in 90 days. What I help my clients do from there is I help them create a mind map that says, all right, what is the big question that I'm trying to solve? And then what are the other associated things that they need to know in order to solve that problem? And when we start writing, we write what I call out of sequence. What people run into is this thing called writer's block, right? Because they're sitting there and they're thinking, oh, I got chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and they try to start and write sequentially. That doesn't always work, because you may not have all of the information you need to write chapter 2, and now you're stuck. But if you write out of sequence, if you write in, here are the main topics that I want to write about, and whatever you feel like writing about that day, you write about that topic, then you can write out of sequence and then sequence it towards the end when you're getting ready to take it into editing. But that shortens the process a lot. There are other ways to shorten the process. If you don't like to write and you like to speak, you can also dictate. So you can take your topic, your subtopic, if you will, you can dictate that, get it transcribed, and that becomes the basis of that chapter. So now you're not starting with a blank piece of paper. So there are lots of little tricks and techniques that you can use to shorten that time. So I wrote both of my books in 90 days, and so I know that it can be done. I also tell people, and that was done, you do have to focus. I mean, you do have to spend a couple of hours every day during the writing part of it, but that's probably maybe 6 weeks. The rest of the time, you're doing editing, you're doing proofreading, you're sending it out to your beta readers to get some feedback. These are people in your target audience that you are looking to help you make sure that what you've written makes sense. I know it makes sense to you because you're close to it, but it may not make sense to your target audience. So you pick some people in your target audience, let them read the book and give you feedback so you can make some changes. So it absolutely can be done with focus. Now, one of the other little tricks that I tell people to do is pick an accountability date. For me, it was a conference. There was a conference coming up, and I paid for a booth at that conference. And so I was bound and determined that I was going to have my book done. Otherwise, I was going to be out a lot of money. So you might pick a conference that you plan to bring your book to sell, or you plan to have a booth. But it doesn't always have to be an industry thing. It could just be you decide when you think you want to publish it, and you tell all your friends, you announce it on Facebook, you put it on LinkedIn, and you say, my book is coming out in March of 2019. Now you're on the hook because you got that accountability date that's out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so mine was similar in regards to, I was part of BNI, which is Business Network International, and I was told that morning that so BNI, the way that it works is a member gets to get up and give a 10-minute presentation about their business at every meeting. So 6 weeks out, they will announce like the next person that's speaking, like, 6 weeks from that specific day. And it was going to be, I was told, it's going to be your day, Cherie, in 6 weeks. And I stood up and I said to the entire meeting, in 6 weeks, I'm going to give everybody a copy of my upcoming book. And all I had at that time was an outline.
Yes.
But you want to talk about race to get it done. So, one of the things that I did was I went to Panera I think I did every Saturday and Sunday. I was working with my mom during the week.
Right.
I went to Panera every Saturday and Sunday, and Panera was great for me because you can get lunch and you can get coffee and refill and things like that.
Right.
And I just literally sat there, and what you said about not doing the sequencing, that was me. Like I, would say, okay, I feel about writing about this today.
Yes,
so that's the chapter I would focus on.
Right.
And I had an editor. Now I paid an editor to edit for me because I didn't have the time to go for the beta readers. But I mean, those kinds of hacks do work where you stand up, or you can get a let's say some of us are going to meetups, for example, and you can go up and ask the person, hey, I've got a book coming out in 2 months, and I want to be the speaker 2 months from now. Let me tell you something. If you're on the hook for that, make it
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Because everyone will be looking for your book. So.
That's right. Yeah. And another thing that is a hack is not to try and edit while you're writing. As you mentioned, Cherie, you had a professional editor, so did I. And the reason is you want to stay in a zone. When you're writing, you want to be in that writing zone. So our tendency is we'll write a sentence, we'll read the sentence, then we'll think, oh, that doesn't sound right. Let me change that word. Or I typed that wrong. It's misspelled. Let me check the misspelling right away. Don't do that. You just want to get all the information out of your head and onto screen or paper, right? And so you write in a zone where you just continue writing and getting all of the information out. It's easy to go back after the fact with a professional editor or proofreader and have them clean up those spelling errors or those incomplete sentences and things like that. You don't need to waste your time because that will slow you down in the writing process.
Right. So Jackie has a couple of questions here, and I think this goes right into our conversation. One of her questions is, okay, how do you turn an ebook into a hard copy book? Do you have any suggestions for her?
Sure. It's fairly straightforward to turn an ebook into a print book, and usually what we do is what's called perfect bound paperback book. Those are the books that you typically see in the business section of Barnes and Nobles, or that you purchase on Amazon. So they're paperback books, usually of a size either 6x9 or 8.5 by 5.5, and that is the industry standard for books of the type that we would want to write. So there's a couple different ways that you can do it. You can take it to a local printer and ask the local printer to print the copies for you. If you would like to use Amazon, Amazon has a thing called KDP, Kindle Direct Print, and they have a very good process where you can upload your Word doc that you created your ebook in. You can hire someone like on a Fiverr, as an example, to create a cover for you, upload the cover, and then Amazon will do what's called print on demand. So they will put that book together. It will be in paperback. It will be available on Amazon, and it gets printed when someone orders it. So you don't have to have an inventory sitting in your garage or in your basement, hundreds of books waiting to be sold. The other nice part about KDP, and I do use it a lot, is that you as the author can purchase the book at cost. So a book of the type that we're talking about now is going to cost to print between $5 and $7, right? So you're going to pay $5 a book, even though the retail price might be $25, right? So you can buy as many copies as you want as the author at that $5 price. So let's say you have a meetup, as Cherie said, you promised the meetup that you're going to have your book ready in February. You can then order 30 copies of that book at the author price and take those 30 books with you to the meetup. And then anybody else can just go onto Amazon and buy it at the retail price. It gives you the flexibility then to do a special. So you might decide that you want to do a special deal for people who are present at the meetup, and you're only going to charge $15 a book, as an example, instead of the $25 list price. So now you've got the flexibility as the author to charge whatever price you feel makes sense, or whatever is going to be attractive for the situation that you're in.
Right, right. So, copywriting your book, ISBNs, do you have any thoughts about those?
Sure. Now, your book is copyrighted as soon as you write it. The way that the copyright laws work in the United States, now this is the United States only, but in the United States, as soon as you produce a work, it is copyrighted to you. So you do not have to go through the expense of going to the copyright.gov office and copywriting your book, unless you just feel like you want to. It is not necessary. People cannot take your book and use it as their own, because it is copyrighted to you. The advantage of doing a copyright, if you choose to do it, if someone does plagiarize your work, then it gives you a legal position to go after that person, right? So you can legally go after them and say, you've infringed on my copyright. What I have found is that for people like us, the average business owner, there's no reason to do that, right? But again, you always have that ability if you choose to. Now, ISBN is different. ISBN, which is, I can't think of what the acronym stands for, is something, something, something number, but it is actually a code that is produced by one company in the US that identifies your book. And it identifies the title, the subtitle, how many pages are in it, the size of it, what the cover looks like. You upload all of that information into the ISBN website, and that becomes the identifier for your book. The advantage to having an ISBN number is that is what is used by external retailers who want to source your book. So the library, or Barnes and Noble's retail store, or Books A Million, or Costco, or Walmart, any of those people who actually order books from what's called, there's a book called Books in Print, that's actually the name of it, Books in Print, that contains all of the ISBN numbers for all of the books. And when a retail store wants to order a copy, that's what they go to. in order to get into books in print, you must have an ISBN. Now, an ISBN right now in 2018 costs $126, I think, for one ISBN. And it costs about $260 or something like that for a block of 10 ISBNs. What I recommend people do is to buy the block of 10, because that number is, like I said, the identifier. It identifies the entire specs of your book. So if you do a print version and an ebook version and an audio version, all three of those must have a separate and distinct ISBN. So if you plan to do an ebook version, a print book version, then you may as well buy the block of 10. That's what I tell people to do.
Great. And Sheree is saying ISBN stands for International Standard Book Number.
Thank you.
So
I could not remember that. Yes.
International Standard Book Number. Thanks, Sheree.
Yes, right. Very good.
It's always on the hunt and always on it.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
And those things they're very easy to get there. You can go online and order the ISBNs. You can order the block of 10. Now, one thing I will say that sometimes people get a little bit nervous about is that when you purchase an ISBN, either a single one or a block, you're actually becoming a book publisher. ISBN numbers are given to publishers as opposed to individuals. Now, all that means is that you could have a company like my company, Grassroots Marketing, is the owner of the ISBNs for my books. But you could create, if you have a company, it could be attached to your company, or your name could be the company name. So I don't want people to get hung up on that, but it's a little quirk that says they don't give them out to individuals, they give them out to companies. So when you fill out that form, they will ask you, what is the publishing company name?
Right. So my books are giveaways for the most part. Therefore, I don't have an ISBN.
Right.
So I don't want people, if your book is going to be more of a giveaway than something that you sell online,
right,
then,
right.
Don't hyperventilate over it.
Absolutely. Like I said,
it depends on you.
Yeah, that number is used by retail outlets. So if you don't plan to sell in a retail outlet, if you only are going to sell it in person, or you're going to give it away, or you're only going to sell it from your own website, then you don't need an ISBN. And actually, there are certain options on Amazon where they will give you an ISBN as part of that KDP that I talked about before, so you don't have to publish a separate thing. What happens in the case of that is that Amazon becomes the publisher of record, and again, that only makes a difference if a library or somebody is wanting to order the book. They may say, oh, this was published by Amazon. There's a lot of junk out on Amazon, so there's a quality issue. But if you're not concerned about any of those things, like I said, if you're selling from your website, you're selling from the back of the room, the back of your car, or you're giving the book away, then you don't have to worry about any of those things.
Yeah. And the other trick I have for people, if you're going to be selling from the back of a room, charge $20. The reason is because $20 is what comes out of the ATM.
Yes.
I learned that early on in my book days.
Absolutely.
And it does work. Like, people will pull out the 20 and say, here you go.
Yes.
And I walked away with $120, and that was grocery money. Literally.
Yes. That's right. That's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And even if you have a smaller book, let's just say you have a small book that you're only selling for $15 under normal circumstances, you can give them two, right? Sell them two for $20 and have them give one to a friend.
Yeah. Otherwise, then you'll have to carry change, and you don't want to do that.
You don't want to do that. That's right.
Whatever you can do to get the $20 is what you want to do.
Yes, that's right.
The next question is, what are the pros and cons of self-publishing?
Yes, I'll tell you, the big pro to self-publishing is you have total control. You have control over what the cover looks like, what the list price looks like, and what the published date is. There is nothing wrong, obviously, with going with a traditional publisher, but the timeline for a traditional publisher is 18 months to 2 years on a good day. right? What the process of working with a standard New York publishing house and even some of the independent publishing houses is you first must get an agent. You have to write a book proposal. Your agent shops the book proposal around to different publishers. If they decide to take a chance on you, which is questionable because the book industry has changed a lot because of the proliferation of self-publishing, independent publishing houses. The big New York publishing houses don't want to take a chance on a new, unproven author. So what they are expecting, if they take you on, they're expecting you to already have a tribe, a following, already have a social media presence, already have a marketing plan so that they can risk the advance that they give you. Now, people love to hear, you heard that, let's just say Barack and Michelle Obama got $8 million advance. That's something wonderful. For a new, unproven author,
it's not you.
The average advance is $10,000. That may seem like a lot. But that $10,000, the reason they call it an advance is because it is an advance against future sales. What that means is that they give you the money up front, but then you don't get any more money until you sell enough books to cover that advance. The other part to that is that when you go with a traditional publishing house, the average royalty is 10 to 12%. So if you have a book that sells for $25, your royalty is $2.50. You have to sell a lot of $2.50 to cover that $10,000. Consequently, for most new authors, the only money they ever see is that advance. They never see anything else because they don't sell enough books to cover the advance. The average lifespan, if you will, or life quantity of books of the type that we are talking about, business-related books, is less than 500 books. So in my mind, if I have to do all of the marketing work, if I have to build my own tribe, and oh, by the way, it's going to take me 24 months to get on the schedule if I'm lucky, then I say, why don't I take all of that under my own control and take almost all of the money? Because all I have to pay whenever I sell a book is what it costs. Let's just say you used Amazon, what it costs Amazon to print, which is $5, right? And so I put $20 in my pocket instead of $2.50. So that to me is the pros and cons of self-publishing versus traditional publishing. Now, I will say that if you have a very popular book that you end up selling thousands and thousands of copies, those traditional publishers will come after you. There's been many authors who have started out as self-publishers, but because they were so successful, a traditional publisher came to them and said, hey, we want to publish the next edition of your book.
Yeah, then you have negotiating power.
Yes.
I know Grant Cardone, that's what he did. He was selling his own book, self-published, and he has such a tribe now that the publishers came to him for his last book and were like, we'll pay you. We want you to come, and you've got negotiating power. Like,
yes, that's right. That's right. So, yeah, and the other thing, just one other thing, Cherie, on that self-publishing, some people still feel like there's a negative connotation against self-publishing because when in the very early days, it was called vanity publishing because that was the only way you could get in print. I will tell you that today, self-publishing is mainstream. I went to the big industry publishing conference. It's called Book Expo. They alternate between the East Coast and the West Coast. I happened to go to the one that was in Chicago a couple of years ago. There was an entire track for self-publishing. There was an entire section of the expo where you had vendors that were specifically targeted towards self-publishing. So I want to put everybody's mind at ease. Don't think that you are less than if you do self-publishing because it is definitely mainstream now.
Yeah. I don't know if Dan Kennedy told us this story about some guy who only printed like 100 books, but he made millions of dollars. He was some high-powered consultant. You may have heard this story. It was some guy that was some high-powered consultant, and he was trying to get into like the top Fortune 50 companies or something like that, the big companies that could write him big checks. And he only printed like 50 or 100 of his books, got them in the hands of the right people, and it was one person that ended up bringing him on, and then the rest of the dominoes fell. So again, one of the questions that Linda asked is, what is your purpose for writing this book or this ebook? And then from there, that really does dictate your strategy. Is your purpose to get emails and build an email list? Or is your purpose to get in front of every healthcare CEO in America talking about blockchain? Well, based on your purpose will depend on the strategy that you use with this. So,
and there's nothing like sending a book in the mail. If you send a marketing piece in the mail, that's a postcard, a flat envelope, anything like that, chances are that gatekeeper, that assistant is going to toss that. It's never going to get to the CEO. But if you send a book, what they call lumpy mail, that is going to get opened, number one, and it's going to go to the CEO's desk because it has value to it, perceived value, and that's going to get past that gatekeeper.
Right. And actually, the way that I got on MSNBC was I went to a conference to meet the woman that hosted this TV show. And I went up to her before she spoke. Remember, you can't wait until after they speak. You have to go before they speak. And I showed her a copy of my book, and I said, I would love to be on your show. I'm sure you get this all the time. And she said to me, you'll be surprised how few people ask me. I will never, ever, ever forget that experience. And then she proceeded to give me her real NBC Universal email and that NBC Universal email of her producer. Like, that's how I knew I was in.
Yes.
So if you're trying to network with the top 50 healthcare CEOs, going to their conference with your book and saying, I'm going to make sure to, give them a copy and take a picture with them while they're holding the book, and I'm going to post it on LinkedIn and tag them and all of that. Like, that's when you start getting into strategy here.
Yes.
So the book is never going to sell your consulting services, but what it does is it opens the door.
It opens doors. It absolutely opens doors. Yes. And so I say it's the cheapest $5 lead generation vehicle you can ever do, because you can, as you said, Cherie, you can give that book away all day, every day, and that might turn into a $3,000 consulting engagement.
Right. It does. I mean, it does, trust me. So Jackie has two other questions here. She's asking about the estimated cost to publish an ebook or, I guess, a hard copy book. So just the ballpark, for the front cover and the, I had a graphic designer lay it out for me and all of that. I'm interested in hearing what your ranges are for all of it.
Right. Well, for an ebook, it's little or nothing because you're not printing anything, right? It's all bits and bytes. So the worst thing you might have is somebody to do a nice graphic cover for you, which you can get for, let's just say, $30 if you choose someone
on Fiverr.
Yeah. Now, for a print book, what I usually tell people is it can, depending on how much you want to do yourself, it can range from about $2,000 to about $5,000. And that depends on how much you outsource. So you outsource the editing and the proofreading, you outsource the cover. As you mentioned, you outsource to a graphic designer to do the book layout. Those are things that I tell people, please spend money on it. Don't try to be your own graphic designer, your own editor, your own book layout person, because those are the things that scream self-publishing. Those are the books that have typos in it and pages that don't look right. There are industry standard ways that a page on a book is supposed to look like. And so you want to hire people who do that all day, every day. You're the business expert, not the graphics person, not the editing person. So spend some money on that. So it depends, again, on how elaborate you want to get. And so, like I said, between $2,000 and $5,000, and whether you want to hire someone like me who's a consultant, right? So between $2,000 and $5,000 to get a printed book from idea to book in hand.
Mm-hmm. And I said this in our six-figure consulting class that and I got this from Dan Kennedy, actually, or no, National Speakers Association. You can't be a $20,000 consultant looking like a $20 consultant.
Yes, right.
Your book is a representation of you. If you're going to ask for $20,000 for a consulting gig, your book needs to look like you're worth $20,000.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Linda's telling me tonight about this KDP thing. I knew about just-in-time printing, but when I started with my books, it was
it wasn't as big as it is now.
The industry has improved tremendously.
Yes, absolutely.
I chose not to do that, but you've got options these days. I had to pre-sell my books so that I could defray some of the costs. And I remember that 2000 was about right, and I got like $1,000 worth of pre-sales. In part to my mom and dad.
Yes, right.
Got copies of my book.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
You do, right?
That's right. That's right. So two things I want to tap into that you said, Cherie, which are really good. You can't be a $2,000 consultant, with a $20 thing, right? And there are so many things that you don't know about as a business person, as a blockchain consultant. Things like the cover of your book. There are certain colors that don't show properly, because if your book is on Amazon and let's say you have a gray cover with a light gray title, that might not show up on Amazon properly. That's the first thing people see, is that little thumbnail picture when they're on Amazon. Or you have a font that doesn't look right for the type of book that you have, or your cover. One of the things that I saw on one of the TED Talks was a guy who was talking about book covers, and he said, you never want to have a book about apples and have the word apple and then a picture of an apple under it. That's overkill, right? It says, again, I'm an amateur. Instead, you may have apple in the title, and you may have something else, what you made with the apple, right, as a picture on the cover. These are things that we as business owners are not thinking about, but someone who is used to doing book covers is going to do that for you. Right? And then the other thing you mentioned, which was pre-sales. I know you did it to defray print costs. That's one reason to do it. But another reason to do it is to start building your tribe. I'm working with a client right now who her book is going to come out in first quarter of next year. And she's starting to do what she calls she does some social media posts every Friday about the book. Sometimes they're excerpts from the book. Sometimes they're just things about her process. And we've created a pre-order page for her. So at the end of every post, she says, hey, if you'd like to be the first to know about my book, or you'd like to pre-order the book, go here. So she is steadily, while she is writing the book, building people on her pre-order list. And as soon as that book gets done, she's going to automatically have orders coming out right off the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah. So final question from Jackie is, how does she prevent theft of her ebook?
Again, what I would recommend is that you put it on an established platform like an Amazon or like a Barnes and Noble's online. Those, as I mentioned, ebooks are very easy to get uploaded to those standard sites. If you don't want to, and again, the reason I keep harping on Amazon, Amazon is the biggest book company in the world, and you want to take advantage of the power of Amazon, because they will sell your book for you. Because when you write a book about blockchain, if you notice, every time you look at a book, they'll also say people also bought X, Y, and Z. And they'll give you 10 other books. If your book might then show up in the also bought, even if the person wasn't looking for you specifically. So there's a lot of reasons to get onto that Amazon platform. But if you're selling from your website, as an example, and you're selling that ebook, then you want to put it onto something like Amazon S3 or one of the digital sites where you have control over it. There's also some other book-related sites, which I'm drawing a blank on the name. I can give you those later, Cherie, but they're specifically related to ebooks, where they control how many times a person can download. So say I give you a link to download my book, they keep track of that so that that person can't send the link to somebody else and have that person download it. So I'll look that up later and send that to you. You can
okay, all right. So Dr. Keisha has a question. I think she's asking, how do you feel about done-for-you services to jumpstart your process? So done-for-you services, what do you think about that?
Well, done-for-you services are great. You just need to vet the person that's doing the done for you. You want to look at their credentials, what it is that they're telling you they will do for you. Now, it depends on what it is that you want. I like to outsource as much as possible, right? So that I can focus on just creating the content, getting the ideas out of my head. That's very difficult to outsource. The way I would say you would quote unquote outsource that is to, like I said, either do like an audio where you talk the words and then you get that transcribed, so you get a jump start on it instead of having to write from scratch. But other than that, I don't like to say outsource the actual content, but everything else can be a done for you. The book cover can be a done for you. The editing can be a done for you. The proofreading, the internal layout of the book, all of those things can be a done for you. The publishing can be a done for you. One of the things I do for my clients is I upload their books for them to Amazon. So, there's many things that you can hire someone to do. I would just caution you, the actual content, because that is your intellectual capital. You want to be the one controlling that piece of it.
Right. So for Done For You, when I wrote my book, I was overwhelmed before I stood up and just told everyone I was going to write my book.
Yes.
So I reached out to a ghostwriter, and again, this was 2008, 2009 time period. And she wanted to charge me $10,000 to write my book. So, I'm sure that there are ghostwriters now that are less expensive, but for a really good one, you are going to spend quite a bit of money.
Yes.
However, I'm sure if Linda doesn't do this, Linda, you can let me know if you do this service. There are other people who can help you with this. Just having a conversation with someone where, let's say instead of dictating it, someone just asks you a whole bunch of questions.
Yes.
And kind of drills down and say, well, why did you think that? Well, why are you saying that?
Yes.
And that can help you kind of flush out your content as well.
Right.
If you're so overwhelmed, and Linda, you can let me know again if you do this service, but just having somebody who can kind of coach you or walk you through that, maybe even at the end of your conversation, you feel like you have some sort of an outline, just here are the 10 chapters that I'm going to have in my book, or whatever. Right.
Yes. That is actually one of the things that I do, Cherie, for my clients. What I like to do is, as you say, have a structured conversation with them about their book. And we create what I said earlier, a mind map, as opposed to a true table of contents. And we talk about what fits and what doesn't fit in the book. And then we also have a structured conversation, which I record so that we can have that transcribed. And again, that can help them jumpstart. So I do what a portion of what's called developmental editing, which is to help you develop the book. What should it look like? How many chapters should it have? What should the chapters be? And what are the key points that we want people to get out of the book? Yes, those are parts of the services that I provide.
Right. And another thing that I want, and if anybody else has any more questions, just put them in the Q&A for me, please. So one of the people, actually I had several testimonials for my book, and one of them was Barbara Corcoran of Shark Tank.
Yes.
And I will tell you that people will look at that as well, and all of a sudden my validity goes up through the roof.
Yes, right.
But I also had a woman named Valerie Gatos who ran the Angel Venture Forum of DC. So again, this is a business plan book on how to write business plans to raise funding. So she was very relevant. I
Right.
had bankers give me testimonials. And people often ask me, how in the world did you get to Barbara Corcoran? How in the
Yes.
world did you do that? And how this is relevant for you is, let's say that you are in healthcare. You're writing the blockchain for healthcare ebook or book. You may say, I want to get the head of the Mayo Clinic, you know, for example, or some big hospital chain or some big insurance company, or the head of the Association of Hospitals, or whatever is relevant for your industry. That if they blessed your book by giving you a testimonial, all of a sudden your status and perceived status would go through the roof, right?
Yes.
So it was actually quite easy for me to get Barbara Corcoran, believe it or not. Now, it helps that Barbara Corcoran, at the time, she was a rising star on Shark Tank. It was like her second season. She was still a little bit easier to get to at that time. I never actually spoke with her, but this is where you have to have guts, right? I called her office and I spoke with her admin. And I said, I'm writing this book. What would it take for Barbara Corcoran to take a look at it and to give me a testimonial? And here's the trick that I learned with testimonials. I sent the book to the admin, and I also sent 3 different testimonials that Barbara could choose from. Because if you ask them to write the testimonial, they won't do it, right? Now, and she chose the one that she liked, and she said, you can use that one, and that was the trick. Now, with the Angel Venture Forum, I did the same thing. I reached out to Valerie. I actually, through my LinkedIn, I reached out to someone who knew Valerie, and that was how I got in. Otherwise, I would have never got in with her. So that's why you got to keep your LinkedIn up. And I did the same thing, and she, unlike Barbara, so Barbara Corcoran never read my book, but Valerie read every word, okay? And to this day, I have her utmost respect. So that's another thing as well. You want to make sure you're sending an edited good copy of your book if you're going to do this. But she read it, and she wrote her own testimonial because she was so impressed with the book that I wrote. So I'm just kind of giving you a flow of what might happen. But again, people look at the back of my book and they look at the testimonials and they're like, wow, you must be legit. You know? And it just helps bolster you. So
Yes, you're right. And my advice is to start early. Start now. Even if you don't have the book, you're not even thinking about writing it yet, but start building that network. As Cherie said, build that LinkedIn network, because you don't know who may know the person that you're trying to get to. And so you want to build that network before you actually need them. The other thing you want to do on even the other social media platforms like Facebook, many of them have Facebook pages. You want to get on that page and you want to start making meaningful comments, not just you're not just clicking like, but making something that's meaningful, because they will notice you. If you make a meaningful comment and you do that on a consistent basis, or you're helpful, someone else in the group has a question and you're just helpful and answering it without trying to sell anything, you get on the radar of that person who is the admin. And even if that's the assistant and not the real person, they will alert the real person that here's somebody that's very active in that group.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. So I didn't realize the topic of writing an ebook would be so exciting. And we are at our hour mark. But what I'd love is to have any final comments from you, words of encouragement, as well as ways that people can reach out to you if they have more questions.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Cherie, for having me. I've enjoyed this very much. I can talk about writing books all day as a former techie. And that's really my parting words. I truly believe, I know people say this all the time, but if I can write a book, you can write a book. I am a true bits and bytes person. I did not major in English or communications or journalism or any of those things, and yet I still wrote 2 books, and it's because I knew my subject matter. And everybody who is listening to this, either live or on the recording, you know your subject matter. So that information is in your head. You just have to get it out of your head and onto the printed page or onto an ebook. So I actually have a gift for your followers, Cherie. They can go to expertauthor411.com/Cherie. And I have a little worksheet. It's an 8-page worksheet that walks you through those first 3 steps that we talked about, that says, why do I want to write a book? What problem am I solving, and who is my target audience? And then what is my story? We didn't really have a chance to talk about your story, but your story is what makes you unique. Even if I write a book on blockchain and you write a book on blockchain, it's the exact same content, but because my experience is different, my book is going to be different. So I have a worksheet that takes you right through that whole process and gets you ready to take the next step to getting your book ready. So if you go to expertauthor411.com/Cherie, you can get the free download for that.
Okay, then. I put it in the chat box. I'm going to throw it in Facebook and make sure that it is in the description for everyone. So
Excellent.
You were an awesome, awesome guest.
Great, thank you.
I cannot recommend Linda highly enough. If you decide that this is something that you want to do to grow your blockchain consulting business, definitely reach out to her and forge a path.
Great, excellent. Thanks, Cherie.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.